All right, guys, so this should be the last breakout video. Basically, the last things we need to finish up is we just make it so like with the ball, if you miss the ball, that you basically die, and then that we actually get to the game over if we win and all that stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is how to determine. So I'm going to go back to my game layout here. When the ball leaves the screen, that you kind of get a game over, or if you're playing a game with lives, that you lose a life. Okay. Now, one way we can do it is by looking at X and Y values, and X and Y coordinates are really important. So the way this game tracks the position of objects is through an X and Y value. And if you look down here, whoops, at the bottom, I kind of want you just to see highlighted, but right below my red circle there, it says mouse and it has two numbers. And you'll see that those numbers are always changing. That's telling me my X and Y coordinate. And you guys might be familiar with X and Y coordinates from like math class or whatever. But basically, your x coordinate is this horizontal left to right axis. And the left, x equals 0. And all the way to the right, x will continue to increase. And then basically up to however long the layout is. Your y coordinate starts at 0 at the top and it increases as it goes down. So the top left corner of my screen, the coordinate is going to be like 0, 0 or in that range. Okay. The bottom, since my layout, if you remember the size over here, it's 704 wide by 480 tall. So this bottom right corner is going to be 740 for the x, or 704 for the x coordinate and 480 for the y coordinate. So basically this bottom line is at 480 for the y coordinate. And y goes up as we go down. So as I go downward this way, now I'm at like 500, and now I'm at like 600, and then I'm at like 700. So the y coordinate goes up as we go below. So one way we could do it is we could tell the computer that if the y coordinate of this ball is below the ball can get destroyed and we can restart. So if I go to my event sheet, we could add an event for the ball, and we can do something called compare y. Okay, so compare y, and we're just comparing the y coordinate. So then what we can say is if the y coordinate is greater than 480, we basically know that that ball is below the screen. Okay, so if the ball is y is greater than 480, then we can basically send it to the lose layout. So I can add an action for system. I can say go to layout, and I can choose the lose layout. Okay, so now I can actually lose. Now there is another way we can do it, I'll show you, is we could actually make like a fall marker. So I could just make like a new sprite, and I could call it fall marker or game over marker, or whatever you can call it, a death line, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to insert it, put it down somewhere. I'll just color it in a color. Let's just paint bucket like red or whatever. Close it. You don't have to give it any behaviors. You don't have to do anything. It just needs to be an object that we can refer to. So I could just throw this red line at the bottom. And then the other way I could do it is I could just set up a collision event. So I could just say ball on collision with another object. And when the ball collides with my fall marker, okay, because even though it's not solid and it passes through it, there's still a collision. And our objects have what's called a hitbox or a collision marker in the image editor. We'll probably talk about it on later games. But there's still a collision happening even if they're not solid. So they still collide. And then I could just say go to lose. Now, what you can do is if you want to copy an event over, just like on the screen, remember we held down control to like copy the object. We can do that in here too. I can hold control and I can just drag that event down. I have it. Now I don't need both of these events because they're doing the same thing. But if this y coordinate thing is just really confusing to you right now, this I think is more understandable. Like you're just making something it can collide with and you go. So you can do it either way you want to. They both work. Okay, so that's our collision. That's how we get our game over. Now we have to figure out how we want to win. So the way that we win is we need all the bricks to be gone. So we just need an event that says when the bricks are gone. So we can't just tell the computer, hey, do this when the bricks are gone. We can't just say it like that. We have to do it in the way the computer understands. So I'm going to add an event, and we're going to do a system event, and we can do something that's called compare two values. So compare two values, okay? And so what I can do is I want to know that when the bricks are equal to 0. So when I type in here, I can start typing the word brick, and it's going to recognize it because it's an object in the game. So this type of coding here, this actually is kind of like programming here. Okay, so this is the part that's a little bit like programming language. So we do brick, and then we separate commands with a dot. So I put a period, and then I type in count. So brick.count means it's going to count how many bricks are on the screen. And when that is equal to 0, okay, so when brick.count equals 0, we're going to say go to layout win. Now, once again, I can copy this event, even though it's not exactly what I want, but it's close. I can copy that and then double click it and just change it from lose to win. And what I'm going to say, guys, is, for now, you might just do everything step by step. But as you get more savvy with this, you want to start copying events, because the more efficient you are as a programmer, it's going to allow you to do everything you need to do quicker. So efficiency is a really good trait to have as a programmer. So if you get comfortable enough with it where you feel like you can copy stuff, like, go ahead and copy your own code. It's going to make it go faster. Okay. So that's it. Like, the whole game should work now. The only last thing is this white background is pretty boring. So what we're going to do is let's make a new sprite, and we'll call it background. I just like to type in BG for short. Insert, we can throw it on here. And we could just make it a solid color. So if I just want like a light blue background, like, I could totally do that. Okay, and I could just make a background and put it on here. Now the thing you're going to notice is that my background is like in front of everything, right? And I want it to go behind. So that's where layers come into play. So down here, I have this layers window. And basically, if I put something on a layer underneath everything, then I know it's going to be below or underneath. So what I'm going to do is I can just right click down here, and I can either add a layer on the top or the bottom. So I'm going to add a layer on the bottom, and I'm going to call it BG for background. And then what I can do is I can highlight this background. And then on the left here, I can actually change the layer. There's a spot that I should be able to change the layer that it is on. And why here it is, right here. So right here. And then, so it's on layer 0. I'm going to change it to background. So now it'll be behind everything. Now, this is another common issue that people are going to see. So see how it's like white and we can't see the background? So the issue is this layer 0 is always the default layer that you get. And it's set to not be transparent. So if I go here in my properties, transparent will be unchecked. You want to check that and make sure that that's transparent. Now, if layer 0 were my background layer, then you don't have to check that. But just any time when like you can't see your objects and there's a white box covering it, it's because this transparent isn't checked on that layer. So I would just always check that, and I wouldn't mess with that. And then the background layer, I would always lock that down. So you just click on the lock. That way I can't drag and move that background when I'm trying to move other stuff. All right, and then basically at that point, your game would be done. Now, the other option you could do for this background that we have here, I'm going to unlock it for a second and double click on my background. You can click on this little folder here, and you could actually load an image for your background. So I just happen to have one ready. So if I go into here, I happen to just have this, but you could download something from online just to use for this if you wanted to, or draw your own. But now I've got this background on here, and you can see it's really huge. So I'm going to zoom out by pressing Control minus, and then I'm going to try resizing it. Now, you could drag it and resize it, or I know my layout is 704 by 480, so I could just go to the properties here, and I can set the size right here. And I can just say, yeah, I want you to be 704 by 480. So let's just do that. 704 by 480. There, now it fits in there perfectly, and it's just the right size that I need. And then now, basically, your game should be done and working. So let's just try it out quick. I'm going to save. Try to save every few minutes. You don't want to lose anything. Run the game here. And it should be a fairly working, functional game. Yep, so bricks are breaking, balls bouncing around. I can maybe lose on purpose and see if I get the game over screen. And you can play with stuff too, like if the ball's moving too slow, like you can change the speed. Like, I really encourage you guys to play around. And my game over is really boring, so I could put a background on that. So there are some extra things, like if you guys get done with this early or just on the side, you're free. This can be your game that like you just test and like do random stuff in. And you can do that in all of your games, but feel free to have fun with it, play with the settings, try things out. Okay, and that's it for the breakout game.